What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about a sequel to a film that holds the title of my least favorite film of 2023. A movie that was so horrifically bad that honestly I wanted to turn it off multiple times during my time watching the movie. And as you guys know, I watch a ton of movies. I release a review every single day. I watch hundreds of movies a year. And it takes an awful lot for me to want to turn something off. There's movies that I definitely do not like, and there's movies I don't enjoy, but normally when someone is creating a piece of art, I can at least find one or two things to be able to appreciate. And that movie felt like a complete and total soulless cash grab because the Winnie-the-Pooh property became public domain and that they were able to cash in on it. And if you haven't seen, there have been a ton of movies that have been announced in this same style, covering all different kinds of properties that are going into public domain. So this is going to be happening for quite some time. And I saw that the sequel to this was being released, and at first I had absolutely no desire. I'm like, the first one was completely terrible and devoid of anything memorable. It wasn't even so bad it's good. And so I'm like, nah, I don't really want to watch it. And I saw some initial reviews coming out of the first screenings that people were like, wow, this is marginally better than the first movie, and they cleaned up a lot of things. And I'm like, okay, maybe they took to heart what people were saying and they switched some things around and approached it differently, and that was enough for me to want to check it out. And the movie I'm going to be discussing with you today is Winnie-the-Pooh Blood and Honey 2. Winnie-the-Pooh Blood and Honey 2 is directed by Rhys Frake-Waterfield. 5 months following the murders, Christopher Robin tries returning to his regular life while dealing with his PTSD. Deep within the 100-acre wood, a destructive rage grows as Winnie-the-Pooh, Piglet, Owl, and Tigger find their home and their lives endangered after their existence is revealed. So, as I said, after some really great reactions from initial screenings to this movie, I was eager to check this movie out. And so, is this movie better than the first one? Yes. Is it a good movie? Absolutely not. It's still really bad, but it's by no means unwatchable like the first one. Like, I would not wish watching that first movie on my worst enemy. This one at least has some moments that are redeemable. They definitely cleaned a lot up with this movie, and I'll talk about it as I break the film down as a whole. So the plot description breaks it down really perfectly. Christopher Robin is who we're following in this film after the events of the first movie, which I couldn't tell if they were treating the first movie as like a movie based on the events that actually happened, because the creatures all look different in this movie, and there's like a kid watching the first movie with like stuff added into it in the middle of the film. So I don't really know. The movie doesn't really do a great job at explaining it, but Christopher Robin has been through that situation of the massacre of the first film, and so there are a lot of people in the community who believe that he committed the murders or that he made it all up, and there's all these different conspiracies going around about him. And so he's going to therapy. His family is there for him and trying to help build him up. And obviously we're introduced to the creatures from the 100-acre wood: Pooh, Owl, Tigger, all of them, and they want to exact their revenge on the people of the town because they keep coming to get them and trying to hurt them. And so the entirety of the film is the creatures from the 100-acre wood going on a murder rampage, while Christopher Robin tries to convince the people of the town that they are real and also tries to stop them from hurting anyone. So as I said, I did not think this movie was very good at all, but I will start with some positives. They really did a nice job cleaning up the creature design. There are a couple, especially like Owl. He looks kind of like a Power Rangers villain, the way that they constructed him, but you could tell that there was a lot more attention to detail and the way that these characters look and the time spent on the practical effects compared to the first movie, where it just looked like everybody was wearing a Halloween mask, and it was really poorly done, and it felt like it was all thrown together last minute. This movie, there is a lot more attention to detail with those practical effects, and I appreciated it. Now, the practical effects when it comes to the kill sequences are incredibly hit or miss. There are some that look really good, and there are some that look very, very bad, and there is no happy medium. It's kind of like one extreme or the the other. And obviously, when it comes to budgetary limitations, there's only so much you can do. But I think about a movie that has budgetary limitations, one of my favorite films of all time, Psycho Goreman, which is a practical effects masterpiece. If you want to watch a movie that does not have a huge budget, that does the best that they possibly can with their practical effects, Psycho Goreman is where it's at. They know what to show with the money that they have, and they know when to cut away. This movie does not. It's like there are certain sequences that they cut away, but there's certain sequences that they linger on for quite some time that they just do not have a budget feasible enough to cover the type of grotesque stuff that they're trying to showcase on screen. The performances in this movie are pretty bad. They're not nearly as bad as the first movie, but they really try to focus on Christopher Robin's PTSD, and every time this movie tries to take itself seriously and tries to hone in on the drama, it feels so forced and unnatural. Like you're never going to be emotionally pushed and pulled at this movie. And they try to build like his relationship with his girlfriend, and just all of it feels so happenstance to try to care about these characters in one way or another, where in the first movie it's like they didn't care about any of those people. It was just kind of like throw people in a situation so they can get killed. And that's what this movie turns into in the third act. You just get a bunch of characters in a space for an ability for these characters to go on a killing rampage, which it's like almost at this point, after watching them attempt to write characters, I would almost rather them just have it be a Friday the 13th kill fest where they add little quirks to the characters so that there's at least something worth watching, in comparison to this where they try to build the drama. And that is my biggest problem with this movie. It is an hour and a half long, and it's like expositional dialogue dump the movie. You're just getting these long sequences of ham-fisted exposition explaining to you every single little detail that you're seeing on screen. And it's like, do you realize how much of this you've already implied through the visuals? Like, do you think your audience is so dumb that you have to explain each and every little detail? And I hate movies that treat audiences like they're idiots. And this movie is one example of that, where it's like, you can't discern anything on your own. We have to tell you every single detail. And that was really frustrating after a while. I also got really irritated in the third act where Tigger's character, they tried to make him Freddy Krueger. He was even like he kept saying bitch over and over again, and it was so infuriating. It was like you didn't even try to make these characters their own thing. I mean, Tigger has all of these lines from the original Winnie-the-Pooh that you could have played around with, and there was like a bouncing moment, but there's so much more you could do with the dialogue instead of just like copy and paste from movies that are way, way better than your movie. And so that was really grating. There were some cool kill sequences in this like rave scene that happens in the third act that I enjoyed, but it just doesn't really amount to anything. You spend so much time on the emotional crux of this one character that the payoff is so lackluster, and they literally leave it to where they're like, yeah, we're gonna do a third movie. And it's like, at this point, the first movie was absolutely abysmal. This movie is like a hair better, but there's not enough here to make me even want to watch a third movie, because the thing is, despite the fact you cleaned up the practical effects, that the characters look a little bit better, there's no substance here. There's nothing that makes me want to come back and revisit it. And I think about like slasher movies now. Even if you look at like the Scream reboot and what they're doing with those movies, or shit, you look at something like Terrifier 2, that is just an incredibly unique vision of this new character, that there's so much attention to detail in not only the character writing in that movie, but in the character of Art the Clown. Like they took all of the issues from the first Terrifier movie and turned it into something spectacular with Terrifier 2. And I'm watching all of these new modern slasher movies that are just doing everything right, and this movie still feels like, well, we honed in on a cash grab in the first movie. We got a lot of flack and people saying this is one of the worst movies ever. We're going to try to make a second movie and make it a little bit better. And they're taking a step in the right direction. They're just not there yet. And I wouldn't recommend watching this movie. There's not really anything of redeeming value unless you think watching slightly cleaned up characters, copying and pasting every slasher line of dialogue that you've already heard. This movie's definitely a skip. So have you seen Winnie-the-Pooh Blood and Honey 2? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was terrible. It's nowhere near the worst movie of the year, but I'll probably never watch it again. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.